We begin with the exclusive Republic inputs on the air scare that we have been tracking. It's a shocking revelation that is coming in, viewers. Republic TV has accessed a trail of messages exchanged among the Air India top officials regarding the bomb threats that were received today. Republic has found out that Air India top boss asked his team to ignore the bomb threat messages. Air India that claims that the security of their passengers matters the most to them. Why will they take this risk? Why will the Air India boss ask their employees, his employees, to ignore these threats? And why would they take a risk as big as this and ignore the bomb threat message? Republic TV is saying this with proof as it accesses the messages. Viewers, my colleague Harsha joins us from the National Capital and senior editor Shravan Sen from the newsroom. Shravan, I'll go across to you first. It's a big development. In fact, an exclusive input by Republic TV raises the questions that why Air India would jeopardize the security. Why will it, direct its employees to ignore such grave threats?
Well, in fact, let's take our viewers through the breaking news now coming in. My colleague Harsha has got us this exclusive. This is with regards to the number of threats that were received by Air India and its associate Air India Express. We are given to understand that since this morning, around 8:30 this morning, about 12 threats were allegedly received by Air India. That's what our sources are indicating. In fact, in a short while from now, we are going to tell our viewers, show those graphics on air, showing the threat mail that was allegedly received by Air India to begin with. The second important aspect is the fact that these threat messages were received by Air India as well as Air India Express. What we are being told is that some of these threats were received when the aircraft was mid-air, some while they were on the ground. Now, what has essentially happened is that due protocol were not followed by Air India. That's what we are picking up at this point in time. In fact, there is a detailed questionnaire that has been sent by Republic TV to Air India, asking them these specific questions. Question number one, whether at all these threats were ignored by Air India. Second, if at all the stakeholders were basically informed. Third, were the protocols essentially followed by Air India? These are three aspects which are extremely crucial, because remember, the moment there is a bomb threat, as per the protocol, there is an emergency landing that takes place, especially if the flight is mid-air. In this particular case, we are being told that protocol wasn't followed. In fact, some internal messages that have been accessed by Republic TV goes on to indicate that a top boss of Air India actually instructed, saying that ignore these messages, particularly keeping in mind that Air India over the last 6 months have actually received multiple such threats. So they have somewhere down the line ignored this and perhaps decided to go ahead with internal checks itself. Now, that's what we are being told right now. These are messages that are coming in. First, let me get a quick response from my colleague Harsha, who's getting us these details. Let's also go on air with the details now coming in. We'll also bring in our colleagues thraet as well as Iona, who's going to join us with the details of the threat messages. A copy of the threat messages that we're going to show to you in a short while from now. We're going to get those copy of those threat messages which were allegedly received by Air India. Thraet will be getting us those details, and the fact that these threat messages, were they actually ignored? Did Air India top boss send a message to his colleagues asking them to ignore this message? If that was the case, were DGCA rules flouted? Was DGCA involved in this? Was DGCA informed about the alleged bomb threats? These are some aspects that they are going to look into right now. Let me quickly go across to my colleague Alisha as well as Harsha, who's joining us on this broadcast. Harsha, first to you. You've got us this big exclusive. Internal messages indicating that a top boss of Air India did not inform the stakeholders about these bomb threats. And in a short while from now, 30 seconds from now, we'll get Krutat getting us those email threats that were allegedly received by Air India. Let's get that quick response from Harsha.
So, Shawan, we have got to know that the rules were completely flouted by the CEO of the Air India, and also from the past 24 to 48 hours, we have got to know that DGCA and BCAS, the major regulators in the Civil Aviation Ministry, those were kept in dark by the Air India top boss. In fact, when I went to speak to the DG and Deputy DG of BCAS, they were completely unaware that the SOPs are not being followed. They were unaware that since morning, 7 Air India Express and 5 Air India airline have received the bomb threat message, and they were not shared. The bomb scare message regarding this. And also, BCAS DG clearly stated that SOPs are being flouted, and they will look into it because it's a serious matter of concern. And we have got to know that not only today, yesterday as well, there were several Air India flights whose emergency landing was not done. It's a matter of concern because they are seeking the commercial aspects. They are keeping the commercial aspect of the airline much above the security of the passenger. And these are those airlines which were the long route airline. They got the bomb scare message. No emergency landing was done. No in-flight checks were done. It clearly reached its destination. And after reaching the destination, also under the regulatory operations, also there was under the irregular operations formula as well, there was no mentioning of the bomb scare message. This is how they are flouting with the rules. They are taking this very casually. They are thinking that every bomb message could be a hoax, and therefore there's no need for the emergency landing. This is the way airline is treating their passengers right now. We have got to know. And also till now they have not shared any important detail with BCAS, DGCA or Ministry of Civil Aviation. Back to you.
Yes, in fact, Krutat is also joining us from the newsroom. Krutat, please tell us about the messages that Republic TV has exclusively accessed that in fact shows how Air India has been ignoring the emergency threats.
Indeed, Rakshita, and these are some very serious concerns that are coming in as per the sources that Air India has ignored some very critical messages vis-a-vis bomb threats. But let me first walk our viewers through the exact procedure that ought to be followed in situations where bomb threats and bomb scares are given. The first step is the most important one, is to judge the credibility of the bomb scare. And for this, the Bomb Threat Assessment Committee, or the BTAC, has to be informed. This committee is comprising of many agencies together, which include CISF and the BCAS. Once the threat has been identified, it is classified further into two categories. One is a non-specific category and the other is a specific category. As the name suggests, if it is a non-specific threat, then it is not taken seriously and no action further is initiated. However, in case of specific threats, there has to be a series of protocol that needs to be followed. In the cases where the threat is considered specific, first the flight threats, the airport authorities or the air traffic controller has to take note of this, and immediately the bomb squad is informed, the CISF present at the airport is informed, and the protocol follows. If the plane is mid-air at the time, then the air traffic controller is responsible for getting the plane landed at the nearest airport, and then the bomb squad comes into picture. And once a complete analysis and a proper safety check of the aircraft is done, after which the aircraft is deemed safe to be taken on air back again. So this is a very long and complex process. So it is very but natural that sometimes when these hoax calls, that as we have seen over 20 in the last 4 days come in, this long tiresome process in the airline industry is also a very cost-heavy process. So perhaps the indications that are now emerging is whether this was a cost-cutting measure in which bomb threats were ignored deliberately by Air India in this case, and the multiple reports that we are receiving right now, and Air India is yet to react to this allegations that Republic has put out. We have put out all the questions to Air India and we are awaiting their official response. But this entire procedure of whether or not a threat is deemed specific or not starts the moment the airline industry or the specific airline gets the information about it. But if it is not forwarded up to the relevant authorities, then the entire cycle of issues start. And the biggest question here would be, Rakshita, who would have been responsible if something untoward happened?
Big cause of worry, in fact. It's really worrisome. It's a huge update. In fact, a big exclusive from Republic. Iona is also joining us from the newsroom. Iona, before I go across to our guests, just take us to the details you're picking up, because this is really jeopardizing our lives. Everybody, almost today, uses flights, travels via air. And if this is happening in one of the biggest airline carriers, this is something that it really comes as a shocker, and many questions will be raised. Who's accountable for this?
Well, Rakshita, yes, absolutely, you are right. And just to add to what my colleagues have said, 7 flights that received threats, 7 Air India Express flights that received threats today, after which we also reported that 5 additional Air India flights have received threats. And now Republic has, as we said, accessed the mail trail between the Air India top boss team. And they seem to have clearly sent out a message to, quote unquote, ignore the threats. But what we're also going to put out now is the fact, which our sources have informed us, is that the DGCA was not informed about these threats. And as we are learning about this latest development, we can also say, based on sources, that Air India refused emergency landing, despite the fact that they knew that there were these bomb threats that were coming, back-to-back threats that they were receiving. And Republic, while we continue our exclusive investigation into the matter, we put out 3 very pointed questions, Rakshita, to the Air India team. The first one being, is it true that Air India did not inform the DGCA about these threats? A very pointed question and a rather important one, because Air India claims to keep passenger safety paramount, but somehow failed to inform the DGCA that threats like this were persisting for a certain amount of time. Question number 2, is it true that they refused to carry out, or rather they failed to carry out DGCA mandated protocols when they were aware, when they came to know about these threats? And question number 3, was there an internal decision taken by the Air India team to not inform their stakeholders about these threats? So these are the 3 questions that we're putting out to the Air India team, and we await further updates on this case, Rakshita.
Largest carrier in India, Mr. Vipul Goyal is joining. Vipul Saxena, I beg your pardon. Mr. Vipul Saxena, aviation expert, and also Subhash Goyal joins us here. But before that, I'll just quickly go across to Shavan, who's with us on the broadcast. Shavan, of course, this really, as Krutat was pointing out, that this could be a cost-cutting measure, and if it is, that really raises many questions, and that directly compromises with the security of the passengers.
Sure that Air India would be following the story very closely right now. I would just like to remind the Air India management that multiple questions have been sent to them before we decided to air the story. We've confirmed with multiple sources before airing this entire story. The questions that we have asked, if Air India wants, we're going to put this out once again for them. Question number 1, was there an internal message sent by a top Air India official to their colleagues to ignore these messages? Now, what were the messages? I'm holding at least 2 of the alleged threat mails received by Air India and Air India Express. This message, whatever would be the nature of the message, these could be hoax calls also. But remember, perhaps my colleague Krutat and our experts who are joining us on this broadcast could actually elaborate on the fact that even if it is a hoax call, there are mandatory procedures at place, and that needs to be followed. As I understand, my colleague Harsha, who's got us this major scoop today, while there has been a massive concern that multiple such threats have allegedly been received, not just by Air India but other. Amidst that, was this the case where you've had top bosses of Air India ignoring it? Was this only because of some sort of a commercial interest? Because as I understand, that the moment you actually inform the stakeholders, there are laid down procedures, which could possibly mean that the aircraft goes in for an emergency landing. If at all there is an emergency landing, remember, it leads to some sort of a cost escalation. We are not saying that Air India had perhaps taken this decision because of certain commercial interest. That is not what we are saying. We are only only asking the question number one, whether at all they ignored this. If at all they ignored it, what was the basis on which this was decided, the rationale behind this entire decision? That's what we are asking, because as I understand, these mails were allegedly received by Air India this morning. Let me also once again go back to my colleague Air India. We'll get all our colleagues on air right now. Harsha, you've got us this big exclusive. You've spoken to multiple sources confirming the fact that at least 12 such threats were allegedly received by Air India. Is there an official response from their side? You've spoken to them individually, you have spoken to the DGCA, you have spoken to the BCAS. None of them are willing to come on record, because we are raising these very uncomfortable questions. We are waiting for Air India to respond to our questionnaire that was sent by our assistant editor, Alisha Dyer, a short while back. These questions were sent to Air India. We are hoping that they're going to respond to those questions that have been sent out. Let's also put out those questions on our grid right now with regards to the questions that were sent a short while back to Air India. These are questions that remain unanswered. Harsha, the response that has come in from the DGCA as well as BCAS on this entire issue.
So, Shravan, I spoke to both DGCA DG, who's Vikram Devdutt, and also BCAS DG Zulfikar Hassan, and it's a matter of serious concern. And I was completely shocked that they were unaware about this matter. And when directed by me, when the question was directed that can Air India take this decision that they don't have to do emergency landing, they can go forward with landing of the aircraft which has received the bomb scare message without even informing the regulator, they answered me by stating that the local regional director handles it all queries. He should be answered, he should be questioned regarding this, and it's a matter of concern. And they did not pull up the airline Aviation Air India. Till now, I have also sent across the mail to the communications department of the DGCA and BCAS. No word from that, no word from them. Also, Deputy DG of BCAS, Kavita Jalan, clearly stated that we follow the SOP and Air India is adhering to all the SOP. We will speak to them, we will look into it if it's a matter of concern, but we can't share the SOP and guidelines with you. That was what she said. But yes, they were completely unaware about it. They told us clearly that they don't know, there was no emergency landing, and they also said that till morning, in this entire day today, from morning 9 till evening 1 o'clock, there was no bomb scare message to the Air India. That clearly states that how Air India kept in dark to these regulator. We have the messages, we have the ID. The counter-terror division is already looking into the VPN, tracking the VPN detail, exactly what's the origin of this tag, of this ID, from where the Air India and from where to Air India and Air India Express such messages have been sent. But the regulators are completely unaware. That's very shocking that the utmost priority of the security of the passengers, which should be the matter of concern for the airline, for Air India, which was completely kept aside and keeping the commercial interest at foremost priority. Back to you.
You know, Harsha, please stay on with us, and also I request Iona and Krita to also stay on with us. We'll go across to our special guest, aviation experts Subhash Goyal and Vipul Saxena joining us. Thank you so much for your patience, gentlemen. Mr. Vipul Goyal, first of all, Vipul Saxena, I beg your pardon, I'll go across to you first. This is the trail of messages that we have accessed, which clearly points out that the Air India boss had in fact asked the team to ignore the messages. Now, in what situation will an airline carrier that of an Air India stature, which also holds international flights, will in fact order this? We know, how can an airline afford this? In what situation they will be compelled to take such decisions that jeopardizes the lives of the passengers?
Not at all. In no situation, any sensible person will take such a decision. And when there's a proper protocol, there's a procedure laid down that in such situation, they have to inform DGCA, they have to inform BCS and all other authorities. And the aircraft has to be landed at the nearest airfield, and it has to go through complete process of a bomb threat, which is handed over to the security people, and they go through the aircraft, they see all the packages, take all the passengers, cargo and everything. And unless they are satisfied that the aircraft does not have any kind of threat on board, I think the aircraft is not there for the next sortie. So in such situation, the action, if what has been reported is correct, that Air India has asked their employees or their operators to ignore these threats. I think it's a very dangerous situation. I think government should look into this, take cognizance of this, and a strong message should be sent to not only Air India but to other airlines as well, because this is a matter of security threat for the passengers and also to the aircraft.
Yes, Mr. Subhash, we will go across to you also. Now, how do you weigh in this development? Because these are incessant threats that we have learned about. We've talked to you about this yesterday also. We're talking about a big conspiracy. But, everybody today almost across classes travels via, flights. And, everything is in the hands of these, carriers. And someone as, as big as the Air India, that is really questionable, raises many eyebrows. Sir.
There are laid down protocols.
Yes.
Not only in India, but all over the world. ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, has laid down certain protocols. Now, first protocol is that whenever a bomb threat is received, they have to verify the genuineness of the threat, whether it is a credible threat or it is this. And secondly, as rightly said, that the plane has to be landed and other thing. But there are so many threats taking place right now that it is difficult to judge which is genuine and which is not genuine. And I think there are certain agencies which are coordinating, the BCS, Bureau of Civil Aviation Security. DGCA comes into the role later on. And, the other intelligence agencies like IB and RAW are also involved today in this, serious thing, which is actually like a war against the country. And whether it is they are using children or whether they are using dummies in various countries to give these threats so that tracing them is difficult, the very fact remains that these threats are there, these threats are real, and they need to be punished. And even, the parents, if it's a minor, the parents need to be punished, that they need to discipline their children. Having said that, coming to the Air India situation, now Air India, as far as a Tata Group company, and as far as Tata Group companies are concerned, I don't think they are always after profit. Because in any case, more than 60% causes. So they must have investigated the things at their level jointly with the BCS and other agencies before they could have asked. Otherwise, I don't think that any officer in Air India or any other airline, because the pilot's life is also at stake. He's driving the plane, and if anything happens, he is responsible. So the protocol is that when the plane lands and makes an emergency landing, it has to be taken to the remotest possible area so that other planes do not get affected. And the passengers have immediately to disembark. And after the passengers disembark, a thorough search of the plane has to be done, including using sniffer dogs. Because sometimes humans cannot. So that is the international protocol, and I'm sure they are following this protocol. But, there was earlier a bomb threat in, not bomb threat, actually bombs exploded in the London, tube. Mm-hmm. And the response after thorough investigation and everything, the next day the tube was again full as usual because life has to go on. The objective of these terrorists are to disrupt, and the objective today is Indian aviation, which is the fastest growing aviation in the world, needs to be disrupted by these anti-national elements. And these elements, I'm definitely sure that they are being inspired from across the country. It's not an isolated incident. Every day threats are taking place. And actually, we should use all our resources, including intelligence, RAW, IB, and even if we have to take the friendly countries like Scotland Yard and Israel intelligence and other people, because this is not just airlines. It is not a threat to Air India or Indigo or Indian carriers. it is a threat to India.
Absolutely.
Earlier,
In fact,
similar
in
threats
fact,
have
yes.
taken place in various schools.
Yes.
So I
Yes, Mr. Goyal, of course, it's a matter, it's a matter of national security. I am afraid it's all the time I have right now. Mr. Goyal, Mr. Saxena, my colleagues Ayona, Harsha and Krital, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, it's a critical matter and Republic TV exclusively leading the investigation into this case. What was the role of the boss? Why did the Air India boss not let the emergency landing take place? A big debating point today, viewers. We will be getting more on that, but right now we're stepping into a very